This is Eastern European Perspective Edition, September 17th, 2025. An overview of changes taking place in Poland and around the world. Poland. Here are the top stories from Poland. Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced that Poland will purchase submarines by the end of this year under the Orca program. All 7 offers have been reviewed, and the likely outcome is the acquisition of 3 vessels. Poland requires submarines capable of operating for at least 30 days without returning to port, armed with torpedoes against surface and underwater ships, and launchers capable of striking land targets. Currently, Poland has only one extremely outdated submarine. The District Court in Warsaw approved the detention and compulsory appearance of Zbigniew Ziobro, a member of the Law and Justice Party, before the Pegasus Inquiry Commission on September 29th, after his absence on 8 previous occasions. The newspaper Rzeczpospolita suggested that the object which hit a house in Wyriki was not a Russian drone, but instead an unexploded missile fired by a Polish F-16 jet during an attempt to intercept a Russian drone. This contradicts police statements, while prosecutors are withholding information pending expert opinions. Residents reported seeing Polish fighter jets before the explosion. Another suspicious flying object was secured near the Parliament building in Warsaw. It was a small aircraft engine found on the lawn outside. An investigation is underway. The car of Waldemar Buda, a Law and Justice member of the European Parliament, was reportedly shot at in Brussels with a pneumatic weapon, leaving 9 marks. Buda described the incident as Brussels savagery. Belgian authorities are investigating but have not confirmed whether it was a shooting or vandalism with a sharp tool. The government is canceling its program of 50% subsidies for electric bicycles, up to 4,500 zlotys. This may be the beginning of broader cuts linked to the budget deficit. In the Cinema City complex at Toruń Plaza shopping mall, a suspended ceiling collapsed, leading to the evacuation of 1,500 people. Fortunately, no one was injured. A new section-based speed control system was launched on the A4 motorway between Konstantin-Wrocławski and Pietrkowice, covering 7 kilometers. The speed limit is 110 kilometers per hour for cars and 80 for trucks, with a margin of error of 10 kilometers. On a nearby stretch earlier this year, 25,000 violations were recorded, with an average excess speed of 21 kilometers per hour. 2 people detained for flying a drone over the Belvedere Presidential Palace and government buildings were identified as a 17-year-old Belarusian girl who had been in Poland legally for several days and a 21-year-old Ukrainian man. Authorities are investigating whether this was careless behavior or espionage. The drone was operated from Łazienki Park. In Szczecin, a cyclist was attacked with a metal baton by a dark-skinned foreigner driving a luxury car against traffic. When asked to give way, the cyclist refused and used pepper spray in self-defense, disabling the aggressor. 2,000 companies, mostly from the small and medium business sector, applied to join the pilot program of reduced working hours with full pay. The government will select several dozen participants. The program's budget for the years 2025 to 2027 is 50 million zlotys. President Karol Nawrocki visited Berlin, where he raised the issue of war reparations during talks with German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. German officials reiterated that the matter of reparations was legally settled and emphasized focusing on reconciliation and commemoration. The German government under Chancellor Friedrich Merz confirmed this stance. Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Radosław Sikorski, said Nawrocki achieved only a moral victory. Nawrocki also raised concerns over Russian provocations against Poland and discussed trade talks between the European Union and South America's Mercosur bloc. He will continue these discussions in Paris with President Emmanuel Macron. International. Now, let's look at the most important international news. Israeli forces launched a major ground invasion of Gaza following heavy artillery and airstrikes. 2 divisions totaling between 10 and 15,000 soldiers each are already engaged, with a 3rd to join soon. In late August, Israel mobilized 60,000 reservists, The offensive aims to destroy Hamas and free Israeli hostages held for nearly 2 years. By Tuesday, about 400,000 of Gaza's 1 million residents had fled, though many routes were blocked. 5 high-rise buildings, around 15 stories tall, were demolished in 2 days. Meanwhile, the United Nations Human Rights Council issued a 72-page report accusing Israel of genocide, saying its actions meet 4 of 5 criteria under international law. The report attributes responsibility to President Isaac Herzog, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Israel's foreign ministry rejected the accusations, calling its operation lawful self-defense. The United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio urged Qatar to continue mediating between Israel and Hamas, stressing that time for a ceasefire deal is running out. The European Commission is preparing new sanctions on Israel, including suspending parts of its trade agreement. An Italian appeals court approved the extradition of a Ukrainian citizen suspected of organizing the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage 3 years ago. The man, identified as 49-year-old Sirkajak, was arrested in Rimini in late August on a European warrant. German investigators accuse him of coordinating the attack, carried out from a yacht rented with false documents. His defense argues he was denied a fair trial and held in poor conditions. Former U.S. President Donald Trump announced plans to classify Antifa as a terrorist organization. He deployed troops to Memphis, a city with the highest murder rate in the United States, claiming similar actions nearly eliminated crime in Washington within a month. He said Chicago and St. Louis would be next. Trump also said an agreement had been reached with China over the takeover of TikTok. Negotiations took place in Madrid, and while details remain scarce, the platform will become American-owned, a U.S. law banning TikTok came into effect on January 19th, but Trump suspended its enforcement pending the acquisition. Spain canceled a €700 million contract for Israel's Sylam missile system, citing its arms embargo. Spain has also withdrawn from purchases of Israeli Spike LR-2 systems and ammunition, signaling a complete break from Israeli defense suppliers. On Trump's orders, U.S. forces destroyed a Venezuelan vessel allegedly smuggling drugs for a cartel. The crew was killed. The ship was hundreds of kilometers from the United States and was turning back when it was struck by missiles. President Nicolás Maduro condemned the attack as aggression. Some U.S. lawmakers from both parties questioned its legality. Stage 21 of the Vuelta a España cycling race in Madrid was canceled after thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters stormed the course, tearing down barriers and blocking roads. Police used tear gas to disperse the crowd. The 80th edition of the race had already faced repeated disruptions from protests, particularly targeting the Israel Premier Tech team. Robert Redford, one of the greatest actors, directors, and film producers of all time, has died at the age of 89. He passed away in his sleep. Trump announced a lawsuit against the New York Times, seeking $15 billion in damages for defamation and slander related to articles about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Ukrainian intelligence carried out an attack near Vladivostok, blowing up a military unit's parking area to kill Russian soldiers accused of executing prisoners of war and committing atrocities. Russian authorities described it as a gas equipment incident and denied casualties. A group of liberal members of the European Parliament, led by French lawmaker Christophe Grudel, called on the European Commission to cancel a $750 billion energy deal with the United States. The agreement, signed in July by Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and President Trump, involves the import of American shale gas. Critics argue it undermines EU climate goals, clashes with methane emission rules, and imposes tariffs of 15% on European exports. They warn it could be used by Washington as leverage to pressure changes in Europe's carbon pricing system. The Party of European Socialists expelled Slovakia's ruling party, led by Prime Minister Robert Fico, due to his recent overtures to Russia and China. Fico attended military parades in Moscow and Beijing, meeting with President Vladimir Putin, President Xi Jinping, and President Alexander Lukashenko. The Slovak Party had already been suspended 2 years ago over rule of law concerns and cooperation with the nationalist Slovak National Party. Positive news. And finally, some positive news. Divers created a three-dimensional model of a German World War II U-boat resting 10 kilometers north of Jastarnia on the Baltic Sea floor. The model was built using 10,000 photos taken during a 3-hour dive to a depth of 85 meters. The wreck is well preserved. Writer Andrzej Sapkowski, author of The Witcher Saga, received the gold medal for merit to culture Gloria Artis. His first story was published in 1986, and his books have since been translated into 20 languages. The Witcher series won the World Fantasy Award, and the collection The Last Wish appeared on the New York Times bestseller list. Polish Speedway champion Bartosz Zmarzlik defended his individual world championship title. It is his 6th title overall and his 4th in a row, placing him among the 3 most decorated riders in the sport's history. That concludes today's edition of Eastern European Perspective.